What to do if your why isn't working? If that question makes your head spin a little bit, this is a really important interview. Today I'm speaking to Deborah Ivanov, and she has a wireframe, a plan to help people, coaches, business owners, and self employed people really nail down their why and find success in business and in their life. Deborah Ivanov, thank you so much for being here today. Where are you calling in from?
Thank you, Morris. I'm happy to be here. I'm in Portland, Oregon.
What kind of people do you usually work with?
The majority of my clients are business professionals, either salespeople or leaders of some sort of a company. They own a company, they're in the C-suite of a company, they lead or manage other people, or they're people who are wanting to change to have their own business. They may work for someone now, but they want to take a big leap. Across the board, there are people who want to take a bigger leap.
And how did you develop your wireframe to help people with their why? And why is the why so important in particular?
So I think the wireframe came about over the years, came out of my own training to become a coach back in the day, which came out of my desire to have some power in my own life to direct events or to respond rather than reactive events. I went through a very, very difficult time when my children were young. I was a single mom. So there was that desire for that. And using the tools that I learned as part of training to become a coach, and then tailoring that for me, I would say that the concept of knowing your why, as you said, why do I want this? Why is this important to me? That's a major piece of the overall puzzle to not only move forward in what I want and to guide me in what I want, but also to help me get through that place, that tension that gets going as I move from one person and one reality to another. That it's that why. I had a teacher of mine, a man named Daryl Rutherford, who's no longer with us. He wrote a book called Being the Solution. And way back in the day when I was a single mom and I had little kids and my life was just a mess, I was about year 5 in a 7-year divorce that I was trying to get through. He came and spoke at one of the local churches and he stayed at my home. And I was fascinated with his book and with his mind and how he thought. And I said, how can I turn this around? And he said, well, you have to have a big enough why. And this was my first introduction into the idea of finding your why, right? Simon Sinek hadn't written his book yet about finding your why. And I didn't know what he was talking about. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I said, I hear the words you say, but I don't know what they mean. And he said, you have to know why you want it. You have to know why you're doing it. You have to know what is on the other side, what it means to you. You really have to have that. I have come to learn that that has to be like almost like a ruler or a touchstone, a guiding star for us. It really is important because we, for sure, at some point in the process of getting something we want, are going to get bumped up against major resistance, bunch of things that look like they say we're going wrong, but they aren't. They're just part of the process. And if you don't have that desire for that thing, if you don't really know why you're in it, you're not going to have the power of the wave to carry you through to that other side. That's how important having a why is.
Do you have a few examples of what people who successfully discovered their whys, how they describe their whys?
Most people, when they come to me, they have a strong sense that they want something different. Most of them may even have a label for it. I want to, double my income, or I want a new position, or I want to move to another state, or that kind of thing. But that's just what's on the surface, right? The why is like the rest of the iceberg underneath there. And they haven't yet seen that the reason they're doing certain things are because of an old why, an old not chosen why, an old subconscious why, to stay safe or to avoid confrontation or to be liked, right? Those are old subconscious whys. So they haven't yet realized the why that's really calling to them, that they feel this longing for. but they know it's there. They feel it, but they don't know what it is. They can't write it in words. They can't draw it on a piece of paper. They can't describe it to someone. They can't see it in their mind. So as they come to know what that why is, as we start digging down the layers of the onion to see what it really is they want, why it is they want it, boy, it almost always comes down to, I want to feel good about my life. I want to feel good about where I am. I want to feel good about the work that I do. I don't know about other coaches, clients, but I know one of the strongest things in my clients is this desire to be a contribution, to have some sort of legacy, to make a difference is one of the words they'll use. Make a difference. I want to make a difference. I want to be an example for my children. Now that's not what they say when they first come in, but as we work, then we start seeing this. This is really what they want. They want to be someone their kids are proud of. They want to be, oftentimes they've been sort of shoved into, call them reluctant leaders, shoved into a leadership role. But now that they're there, they do want to make a difference. They want to be someone that people look up to. They don't want to be someone who's telling people what to do. They don't want to be all the things they didn't like before. They want to be the things that they haven't yet given a voice and given a picture to. And so that's what we do. And once they have that, remember, like my old mentor, Daryl Rutherford, said, you have to have a big enough why. And I think what he was saying that I didn't get at that time is, I have to clearly understand what that why is. I have to make it my own. It has to be meaningful to me. It has to be my why, not someone else's why. It has to live and breathe in me. And I think that is something that we don't really talk about the why. We keep things very surface, very math related, numbers, qualifications, labels. We're not really getting to the soul of the why, which is where people, I found, my clients anyway, really want to go. That is where they really want to go. They haven't given themselves permission to do that, and they haven't had a coach who could hold a space for them to wander around in there and even discover what that is. We have to give our clients space.
How difficult is it to discover our why or work towards our why alone?
That's a great question, and I'm going to give you sort of a contrasting answer. Some people sort of have a characteristic of being a detective in their own life, digging in, wanting to understand. Have you noticed some people are more like that and some people aren't? And neither one is good or bad, right or wrong. But if someone wants to dig, there are certainly enough resources, even free resources out there, that they can do a really good part of digging on their own. They really can, right? And I know this because I have. So it's possible. It's absolutely possible. In fact, it's more possible than ever now because there's more information about neuroplasticity and our neurology and our mental faculties and excellence and our emotional intelligence and our communication intelligence and our somatic, what happens in our body and how our mind is really in all those different places, head, heart, gut, right? Than ever before. Back in the day where I was first trying it, none of that stuff was around. I didn't have those resources. So if you're someone who likes to work on your own and likes privacy and likes space for yourself and maybe even likes ritual, then that's great. And it is very easy. Now, if the person is someone who has a little trouble focusing, becomes easily distracted, comes up against the resistance of doing this exercise, which, trust me, we'll get resistance doing this exercise, right? Because it threatens who we've been being. Now we're asking ourselves to look deeper and possibly even change. So that's where having someone else help you can really help, because somebody can create that container and allow you to get a little resistant, allow you to say, I don't know, maybe this, maybe that, maybe the other thing. Okay, well, let's look at maybe this, maybe that, maybe the other thing. Let's try them on for size. Let's see how they feel. Let's see what they look like. Do they make sense to you? That kind of thing. So having a partner in that can be very, very valuable, especially someone who, number one, knows how to do it themselves. And number two, has worked with enough people who are all different types that they can really be there and be present with the individual in front of them and be a little creative about how they work with that person. Different people find their whys in different ways. Like I may have mentioned, some people want to say it. Some people want to hear it reflected back to them. Some people want to read it. Some people want to write it. Some people want to draw it. Some people want to meditate on it. Some people want to move with it and feel it coming up for them. Make a mantra, or make a mudra, or whatever. So there's many ways to do it. That's the thing that's not always covered in the books either. Is that the why doesn't always have to be this strange little explanation like our elevator pitch. I found our why isn't really like that. So I think for coaches for themselves, but also coaches who are coaching other people, realizing that everybody's a little bit different, and what is the thing we're really trying to get to? We're really trying to get to that North Star. So no matter what it looks like, it could look a little bit different. But when does it resonate, or when is it meaningful, or when does it land for the client? Because that's when they can use it. Or when does it land for ourselves? When does it land for me? Because that's when I can use it, right?
Yeah, I think that is really the crucial point, what you just said. When it lands for the client, that's an emotional thing. That's not completing an exercise and being able to write a why statement. We can do it all nicely by the books. But then, as you mentioned earlier, you said it on the side, but I found that note so crucial. You said we work through a process and we think something goes wrong, but actually that's just part of the process. And if we don't know our why, then these resistances, these obstacles, these challenges are going to throw us off. And as your mentor said, you need a big enough why. And so, as you said, it needs to land for the person so that they can feel it on a day where things seemingly go wrong, right? If you had your own help back in those days as a single mom going through a difficult time, if you had your own help back then, how would your journey have been different?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I didn't have help and then I did. That was the turning point for me, was going through coaching and then going through coaches training. Made a huge difference, because I learned how to coach myself first, and then I learned how to coach other people. So, and I had amazing mentors who are no longer with us, but amazing mentors. And I will tell you, here's the difference it did make. I wanted custody of my children, and I wanted to finish this crazy divorce that was going on and on and on. So I let my attorney go, and I represented myself, and I did get myself divorced, and I wanted custody of my children, and I hired a strategist who had formerly worked in the state system, knew the state system inside out. And I told her what I wanted, and she said, you'll never get that. This is California. You'll never get that. And instead of, this is where knowing your why, I knew what my why was. I knew exactly what my why was and how important it was for me to get custody of my children. Instead of saying, okay, or I'm a victim, or shouldn't be that way, or any of the things I might have said 5 years earlier, I said, okay, maybe that's true. Remember, I'm operating out of my why. Maybe that's true. But if I could get custody of my kids, what would be the first step? And my strategist looked at me just like you're looking at me now, like, oh, and then her brain started working. And then she said, well, I guess you would do this. And I did that. And that continued to be my question to her, was, if I could, what would I do next? And even as we got towards the end of the process, I said, then I wanted to move. And she said, if it was anyone else, I would tell them they can't do that. They're never going to be able to do that. But you have this way of rewriting the story on things. And isn't that what coaching is? Rewriting our own stories so we change our lives, holding a space so our clients have the opportunity, they have the invitation to rewrite their own stories. Isn't that what coaching is? We were talking earlier about being an art. That is the artistry of it. But we don't get that. We don't get that capability without practicing all the time. And for coaches, we don't get it without practicing for ourselves. So it's available for us to offer or invite or hold a space for our clients. That's for sure.
Wow, that is such a powerful story, especially because as you asked the question, right, if I could get custody of my kids, what would be the first step or what would be the next step? Hindsight wisdom, this is a shift of perspective. It's so powerful, it makes sense. However, without that hindsight wisdom, being in that situation and having the the peace of mind or the clarity to make that shift and ask that question, that is acting from such a position of power, all facilitated by you knowing your why. I just wanted to highlight that in the story, because so many times we underestimate how difficult it is to make a shift in perspective when the shift in perspective hasn't happened yet.
And going back to that story of me asking my mentor and him saying, you have to have a big enough why. At the time, I did actually have a big enough why. And I think this is important. I had a big enough why, but I didn't know what it was. I knew what it was, but I hadn't verbalized it. I had no way of using it. I had no way of referencing it. I had no way of doing what you said on a bad day, gathering my why and seeing that it was a powerhouse and I could do something with it anyway. And knowing my why then let me stand with another person who said, you can't do it. That's not how it works. So something was telling me no. And I was saying, maybe, but maybe not. What if? And that was my why working. That was my why, that this is so important. It's so deep. It's so real for me. And if you don't mind, I just want to challenge people, especially coaches, because I work with a lot of salespeople, right? I work with a lot of people who they come because they want more money. They want higher position. They want regard. They want to accumulate something. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, unless there is for them, unless they have that aligned, unless they understand why they want the money, unless they know what it is that they really, really want and why they want that, then all those things are competing. There is no focus, right? And so that's another reason the why is important, because once that gets aligned, then the money usually happens, or solutions happen, or I find that creative ideas come up.
Is the other side of the coin self-sabotage? Does it mean, is self-sabotage just a symptom of not knowing and feeling our why?
I think in some people's perspectives, like my mentor would have said, absolutely. And I would say, here's the thing, self-sabotage can mean many different things. But I will say resistance always happens. It's part of the process. Now, a lot of people don't talk about it like that. They may mention it, they may not, but I find that most people in general think that when things seem to be going wrong, that things are going wrong, that I'm doing something wrong, that something's wrong with something's wrong. But I have not found that to be true. That was my big revelation back in the day, is that sometimes when things look like they're falling apart, or they look like they're breaking, or they look like they're against me, that's exactly the symptom of me breaking through and breaking out. It's actually a symptom of the breakout. And so when people talk about self-sabotage like it's a bad thing, I'm always curious, like, is it really though? Does it have some information for us? What does self-sabotage mean? Just like why? What does the why mean? Well, what does self-sabotage mean? What's underneath it? What does the body need? What does the heart need? What does the mind need? What does the soul, spirit, higher self, personhood, whatever word you want to call it, that deeper something? We kind of run around in these everyday practical suits, right? But there's something deeper for all of us. Well, what does that part want too? Get that aligned together.
Is what you're saying that instead of eliminating self-sabotage, we can listen to self-sabotage and learn from it? It's not about eliminating it, it's about understanding that it's part of the process. It's just one thing that happens on this journey, and we don't have to delete it. We can listen to it and learn from it. Is that what you're saying?
I would say that's way closer than what we were talking about before. I would say it doesn't have to happen. Like, if you're changing, if you are making more money, if you are getting a new position, if you are moving to a new state, if you are taking a new profession, the self-sabotage doesn't have to happen. But if it does happen, do what you said. There's huge amounts of information in it, and it's part of your process in this moment, this time. Another time, resistance may come in other ways. I know for me, sometimes I'll just have a day where I don't get along with anybody. I just feel like I'm bumping heads with everyone. And by about the third or fourth person in, I'm like, okay, it's one of those days. I must be changing. I'm going to go for a walk and take a nap. I'm just going to stay away from people for a day. Clearly, there's something I need. And so it could be that. It can be minor mishaps and accidents. There's a lot of forms that resistance can take. Self-sabotage is definitely one of them. And let me tell you, I'm well acquainted with that one, because that's where I was at when I was in a 7-year divorce. I was sticking my fingers in the gear, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, that kind of thing. So I think what I'm saying is that many of the things we think that are wrong, we don't have to make up a big story about whether they're right or wrong, good or bad, necessary or not. I've also heard people say you have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. Do you really? I don't think so. I've seen a lot of people make amazing breakthroughs without a breakdown. But if a breakdown happens, but if self-sabotage happens, what if worry or doubt or fear or anger comes up? Well, then that's what's here. Let's use it. Just like you said, let's get the juice out of it. Let's get the information from it. Let's see, is it a message that I'm not quite aligned with my why? Is it that I'm changing? Maybe that was my why, but I'm changing my mind. How can I use that to fuel the process and get all the way through?
Now I understand why you initially said that knowing our why is the North Star, because all these situations you're talking about now, these are very messy.
We're human beings. We are messy, Morris.
Yeah, these are messy days, messy times, and how do we live through that? Where do we begin? And that's where knowing the why is the North Star. So it begins with knowing the why, and if we don't know the why, and we don't have a North Star, and we can't navigate these times.
Do you see how important it is for coaches to have their own North Star, to understand their own why, so that they can hold the space for other people who are stumbling a little bit, who are wandering around in the gray zone or dark zone a little bit? When we have our own, we don't have to impose it on the client. It's not necessarily theirs. But when we have ours and we're real stable in that, our why are we doing this as a coach? Why are we helping people? Why am I here in this podcast with you? Having clarity about that, then we have like a groundedness, and then we can create that space for the client to be in some self-discovery, to be in some potential, to be in some possibility. We don't have to rush them into something, tell them what to do. We don't need to do that. We can create some space for them to find their deeper why. But I guarantee you, a coach that doesn't know how to find their own at all, who's not grounded and doesn't know how to find their own why, is not going to be able to help a client find theirs.
Going back to your 5-year transformation journey, and I'm sure there were other years after that, when did you start getting clients as a coach and helping them with this?
Well, that's a funny story too. So during that time, when I was going through that 7 years of getting divorced, at some point I said, this may take longer than a year. I need to stop delaying my happiness. I need to stop putting my kids on hold. I need to make a life, and this is happening. But this isn't my life. The divorce was not my life. I had a life. And I did get my own coaching. I got my own business coaching first. And in that, I was doing graphic design and production back then for textbooks a long, long time ago. My coaches did some sort of a weird personality test and said, "You should be a coach." And I laughed. I said, "What is coaching?" And they said, "Well, coaching is what you're doing here with us." And I said, "Yeah, but you're so good at it." That was sort of my, "Yeah, but you're so good at it." So I was working with them, and I was making changes, and I am one of those people who wants to make my own changes. Like, I was really diving in. I was reading things. I was going to things. I was taking things. And people started to notice. This was like year 4 or 5 in this process. And they were like, she doesn't look so upset, even though things are kind of crazy for her. And so people started following me out in the parking lot. My kids were going to a little Waldorf school then. They started following me out there and they said, "Can you talk to me? Would you talk to me?" And I'm like, "Sure." I love that. On a day when things are seemingly going wrong. Exactly. So they started paying me cash in my hand. "Can you talk to me?" So I would share with them what I'd done or what I thought, and it didn't feel right. So it's not that they didn't get benefit, they did, but it didn't feel right to me. Like, something's missing. I shouldn't just tell people what I'm doing or tell them what to do. I had this sense that there was something else. So I was very fortunate to meet my mentors, Sherry Hudson and Carolyn Wilson Elliott, who taught coaching by teaching self-coaching first. You learn self-coaching, then you learn how to coach other people, then you learn how to deepen it, then you deepen it more and more and more, then you learn how to facilitate. And that was amazing. So I moved from helping people in this friendly way where they were coming to me to actually having some skills. And my business has always been based on referral. People like what they did with me, and they don't mind sharing me with other people they know. And so they pass me on or pass me around, or let other clients of theirs or friends of theirs know. One of my best clients came to me out of the blue because of someone I'd met at networking who was a counselor. She'd been going to the counselor, and she said, I want to move. I want a different job. I'm going through all these changes." And she said, "I don't know how to help you do those big things like that, but here's someone who I think can." And that's sort of my claim that I stake, is that big changes can happen really fast. And so that's kind of what I've become, I would say, known for among people that work with me, is those bigger changes happening pretty quickly. So it doesn't mean that I haven't done all the other stuff too, like be on profiles of listings, and I got a Google page, and I do all the stuff, right? But that's not, mostly people find me from other people who've worked with me.
I mean, that says a lot about the results that you create. People don't refer others if they don't get results in their own life.
And they're all different. They're all different, everyone who comes to me. All different, and the results they get are all different.
What I heard you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I would summarize this, is you walk the talk, right? You worked on yourself first. You had results in your own life that other people could tangibly see, and you combined that with networking. Networking in the broadest sense. I mean, networking in the sense that you were not afraid to talk to people or meet people who had a question for you.
Absolutely. And the only change I would say in what you said is that I think people felt the changes. There was a feeling sense. I went from being someone who was very harried all the time and down, and, I was in an unlucky place and this was just miserable, to someone who I really did change my being into someone who was learning and growing despite the fact that I was also going through this thing. And people feel that, sense that, see that. It's true. They do see that. They hear your words. Yeah, they get a different experience.
What would your advice be to other coaches who don't have that many referrals yet to sustain their business? What would you tell them to do for their marketing or for their client acquisition?
The first thing that came to my mind was take really good care of yourself. Period. End of story. Take really good care of yourself. Take good care of yourself. Take good care of yourself. Take good care of yourself. And this is a really tough lesson. This has been a tough lesson for me, and I'm still learning it, Morris. I'm still learning it. I'm still learning it. So take good care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I think that's just so important. And if that means go get a job, be safe and secure. It doesn't mean that you're not a good coach. It doesn't mean anything. It just means you're taking care of yourself. That's all. So that's one thing. There's this real mythology about coaching and what it should be like. So that's one thing. Take good care of yourself. Second thing is, well, the third thing is experiment. I was thinking experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment a little bit. We went from nobody knew what to do to this is the way coaches offer programs to we're back to nobody knows what they're doing and people are trying things. So try things out. I would definitely say that. Talk a lot to your clients, your past clients. Try things out. If I was going to leave some advice, it would be stay really tight with your past clients. Like, let them know you care beyond the money, beyond just the program. I think that's been really powerful for me. So I'm still in contact with people that I coached 20 years ago.
Follow up, the power of follow up.
Yes, or just caring. Just because you care. You got into the business because you care. So just care about those people. That's all. And show them. It's really easy. Oh, I know what the second thing was. So that was number 3. Number 2 is the biggest thing I have seen in coaches is that they doubt themselves. I'm not sure I'm doing it right. Get out of our fears for us and just place all of our focus on who can I be right in this moment for my client. It doesn't even matter. The most important training you can have is being present for that person. Anything could happen. It's so magical. Doesn't matter about the technique, doesn't matter about your training, it doesn't matter about how many years, just in this moment, leave all that behind and just be open. What is happening right now? And I find people are guided. They're guided in different ways depending on where their perspective of their coaching comes from. But I find that that's like the number one thing I notice is with coaches is they're quote insecure. We're talking about imposter syndrome. We can just move our focus from I'm feeling this and it doesn't feel good to what's going on right now for my client, right in this moment. What's going on for them? What do they look like? What do they sound like? Who are they? How are they breathing? Are they breathing? Check in. Are they breathing? May ask them to take a breath. Or am I breathing? I better breathe. So that's what I would say. That's like the most potent wisdom I can offer to emerging coaches.
I love that. And what I particularly like about your advice is that it requires patience, but it doesn't take as long as we think it would. And the only way to live through that day by day, to say, you know what, maybe I need to get a part-time job or I need to get a job, and to say, you know what, I don't have to go viral on social media. I don't have to buy an email list. I can just contact these 2 people that I've practiced coaching with in the past and focus on making an impact there. It is so easy to live through these weeks and months and the mind goes to money. And the only way to work through that is knowing their why.
Absolutely. I mean, really being connected to why am I even doing this? Am I doing this to impress other people? Am I trying to be Oprah? Why am I doing this? And that goes to very, very deep questions, doesn't it?
Which I need to discuss with you.
Sure. Yes, I do discuss those things. I never back away from anything.
How can they reach out to you? What do you offer to people to get in touch with you?
The easiest way is just to go to my website. There's a contact me or talk to Deborah at the bottom of the page. I know my website is deborahivanoff.com. If you've got show notes with my name spelled out, those all point back to my website. And that's the easiest way is just go to the bottom, and you can sign up for my newsletter if you want. I don't email lots and lots and lots, but when I do, I try to make it matter.
Deborah, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom here with us. I will link to all three pages below this video and below this episode. And for anyone who wants to explore what their why is and how to not just complete an exercise, actually living out their why, please contact Deborah, and her contact form is at the bottom of her website. Deborah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Morris. This has been fun. This has been wonderful.